B. Some general characteristics of academic prose.
As we've already said, college writing is just one of many types of writing, and there are different kinds of writing for each discipline in college. However, there are some general characteristics common to almost all academic writing. Now, where you see these traits and how you see them depends upon the class you're in and the assignment.
Coming up next in our program are some general characteristics common to almost all academic writing. First, we'll list the major characteristics of academic writing, and then we'll discuss each of them. Johnny, why don't you tell us who sponsored these general characteristics?
Brought to you by Extreme Penmanship. When you need it written hard and fast, think Extreme Penmanship. With new wide grip ABCU in the stores. Extreme Penmanship says, make your mark. Yeah.
First, in most academic writing, you state your main points, then support them through the use of evidence or details. Second, your writing should have an organization that clearly shows the logic of the paper. A third characteristic of academic writing is that it should be fair to other points of view. Fourth, all academic prose should always accurately cite all quoted material and paraphrases for a particular paper. Lastly, your writing should also adhere to
Standard Edited American English.
So let's discuss each of these little buggers. First, we'll look at what it means to state your main points, and then support them with evidence. Basically, this means you state your position and back it up.
Your position is just how you think and feel about something. It's your opinion. If you don't have a position, then you might as well pack it up and head home.
But I am already in Heidelberg.
Anyway, essays are probably the most common kind of writing in college. We'll use essays to explain the process of stating your main points and then supporting them. You may or may not have cooked up lots of essays before, so pay attention. This first general characteristic of academic writing is a biggie. In order to explain how you state and back up your position, we'll have to describe the overall structure of a college essay.
The beginning of your paper is where you state your position. That's the purpose of an essay and most academic papers. You state a position and then you prove it, sort of like the opening of a court case.
Usually you put your position or the point you're going to make in your paper in the first paragraph, or it should at least be in the introduction.
It certainly shouldn't be on a French baguette.
Okay, so now you know to put your position in the beginning of your paper. Now listen up. The first paragraph of your paper, in which you declare your position, is called the thesis statement. The thesis is a really big deal to your college teachers. I mean big. Orson Welles big.
Rose big.
Your thesis statement should say the focus of your paper as succinctly and clearly as possible. Your thesis statement tells your reader the main point you're trying to make or your position.
But what if I ate my thesis?
The rest of your paper attempts to prove that your thesis statement is right. Remember, the thesis statement is the numero uno, Mac Daddy, primo importante part of your paper. And if your paper doesn't have one, then you're going to be singing the blues.
Okay, so your thesis statement is your position on the topic you're writing about, and your thesis is shaped by the class you're in and the assignment. Let's look at another important point to think about as you write and rewrite your thesis.
It's also important to have a manageable thesis that's suitable for the length and purpose of the essay. Why? Because you're going to have to prove your thesis. Let's say you're writing a 5-page paper, but your thesis is about this gargantuan topic that'll take a lot of time to prove. You're going to be in a heap of trouble in the next section of your paper where you have to provide supporting evidence.
So after you've stated your position, next comes your supporting evidence. It's sometimes called the body. This is the meat of your essay, or, if you're a vegetarian, the hummus of your paper. In this section, you support your thesis and develop your main points. You support your position with evidence, like research or your own ideas. You absolutely should not support it with styrofoam.
On behalf of styrofoam users everywhere, I would just like to say that that last statement is a load of malarkey. Styrofoam is perfectly safe in the microwave. Observe.
So the body of the paper is where you provide supporting evidence for your position.
Supporting evidence might be statistics, quotes, close observations, or anything else that backs up your thesis. It's very important that everything in the body of your paper in some way refer back to your thesis statement.
Each itty-bitty piece of evidence and illustration should support your thesis statement. If it doesn't, then lose it. Cut it. Save it for the greeting cards.
So you've stated your position and supported it through evidence. So how do you end your paper?
The end of your paper is often called the conclusion.
The format your ending takes depends upon the length and purpose of the essay, as well as the type of writing you're doing. But finishing up a piece of writing doesn't mean you just restate your position and say you've proved it. The goal of the conclusion is to leave the reader with a fresh perspective on the subject, or even a fresh scent.
New car. Now, it is important at the ending of your paper leave your reader with a clear understanding of the points you've made. Your goal is to reaffirm your thesis, but also make your reader wish that this wasn't the end of your paper.
Man, I wish this wasn't the end of the paper.
Wish granted. Your paper shall go on forever.
So that's a general overview of stating and supporting a position. Remember, we'll go into more detail later in the tape. Now we'll look at the second general characteristic of academic writing.
A second important trait in college writing is to pay close attention to the clear organization of the essay. It shouldn't look like a tornado hits your essay. The basic structure of the essay should be logical and clear. In other words, point A should be followed by point B, which is followed by point C.
Now, to be sure your organization is clear, you should provide transition sentences between paragraphs that show your movement of thought.
Oranges grow in trees. Glue. Citrus prevents scurvy. Let's roll.
Needs some transition sentences, doesn't it?
Transition sentences connect the idea in one paragraph to the idea in the next paragraph. They're kind of like signposts. They help your readers see the direction your thoughts take. Without transition sentences, your readers might get lost and end up someplace like Des Moines.
We'll discuss transition sentences some more a little later in the tape. Just remember that no matter what kind of writing you do, it should have an appropriate organizational strategy. In other words, a piece of writing must be organized well so your audience can understand and follow its logical flow.
Now, let's move on to the third general characteristic of college writing. All academic writing should be fair to other points of view. You can't just slam other people's ideas whenever you feel like it. You must say why you disagree and support your own views with evidence or by illustrating the point you're making.
A fourth trait of college writing, or any writing for that matter, is that the writer must always acknowledge any sources used. By sources, we just mean other people's ideas or words.
Other people's ideas might come from a book, an article, an interview, or the internet. Now, you acknowledge a source by citing it. Citing some information means you're giving credit to who said it or thought it. You're telling your reader that this other person said it or thought it first.
There are two ways to cite sources. You cite stuff by using quotations or paraphrases.
In a quotation, you take someone else's words and use them exactly as they are in your paper. You must put quotation marks around the quoted words and cite who originally said them. If you don't, then you'll be plagiarizing.
Plagiarism is when you try to pass off someone else's ideas or words as your own. You don't give proper credit to those who said it or thought of it. Now, even if you read the quote 77 years ago, you still need to give credit to the dead guy who said it.
Ooh, I'm gonna get you for that.
You have to cite paraphrases, too.
In a paraphrase, you put another writer's words into your own words, but it's still the original author's idea, so you have to credit that author for his or her ideas.
So even if you say 2,555 days ago,
Now I'm really steaming.
you still have to cite your sources.
So, that's the goods on citing a source. We'll go into more detail on how to use a source a little later. Just remember that the more sources you use to back up your thesis, and the more well-known and respected your sources, the more likely your reader is to listen to your opinions.
The last major characteristic of academic writing we'll go over is that it must adhere to standard edited American English. Think about when you're talking to your friends. You often use slang or grammatically incorrect language. But when you write, the rules change. Your writing has to be perfect.
That movie was unbearable.
So, a good writer's handbook is indispensable. It can help you when you have questions about what kind of punctuation you should use and when to use a certain word. Get one.
So that's it for the general characteristics of college writing. Number 1, stating and supporting your position. Number 2, a clear and logical organization of your writing. Number 3, an awareness of other points of view. Number 4, accurately citing any sources you use. And number 5, your writing must be in standard edited American English. All of these will be explained in more detail later.
In the next part, we're going to dive into the process of writing a paper. We'll look at a sample essay for an English composition class.
Part, ahem. Yes? You said the last part break. I think you're in error. I distinctly remembered that... Oh, well, my mistake. Part 2, composing the academic essay in the English composition class. And beyond.
Now we'll get to the meat of academic writing, or any other type of writing, sitting down and putting words on paper. So what's the secret to good writing? Well, the bad news is there isn't one. You can't memorize a bunch of facts or formulas. The good news is anyone can be a good writer, even Dan Quayle. But the only way to improve as a writer is to write and write and write.
It's like playing basketball. You can read books on how to do it, but the only way to improve is to do it yourself.
Now, even though there may not be any clear-cut way to write well, there are some methods you can use to improve your writing. The most important thing you can learn is that writing is a process, a series of steps.
So what is the writing process?
The writing process describes the process you or any writer goes through from the time you begin to think about an assignment until you hand it in to your professor or boss or jilted lover. Now, we need to make a quick disclaimer here.
We are going to take you through the writing process in the rest of the tape. But the writing process isn't linear. In other words, you don't have to do step 1 before step 2, step 3, and so on and so on. It's not like the process of getting dressed in the morning where you'll look like a big goofball if you don't go through the proper steps.
She's button your collar.
You don't have to compose a piece of writing in the order we're going to. But the process and methods we're going to go through have been proven by college students and writers to be effective.
Even though the writing process is not linear, we can say that generally you worry about big things first. I mean, come on, you obviously need to figure out what you're going to say before you can say it.
First, we'll look at understanding your assignment. Second, we'll get into free writing or brainstorming ideas for your paper. Next, we'll talk about collecting any information needed to support your position. Fourth, we'll discuss preliminary outlines for your paper, then writing rough drafts, including getting feedback from others and revising what you've written. Last, editing and proofing.
Now we need to be clear here. The writing process we're going to go through can be used in any writing situation, whether you're in school or the workplace, but it should absolutely never ever be used to bake a coconut cake, because you would get ink in the batter and get violently ill. Yuck.
I wish I had some coconut cake.
Wish granted!
But this cake has ink in it!
Next, we're going to take you through the writing process. We're going to go through all the steps from start to finish in the creation of a college paper. First up,
your assignment.
The essay we'll be using is a sample essay that's typical of one kind of writing you'll be likely to encounter in a first-year English composition class. We will be following young Nathan on his journey through the writing process, a journey that will take him into the darkest corners of his mind and one of the most frightening places on this earth, the library.